3 spine-chilling true night drive encounters that expose haunting secrets of the unknown. Lila's heart raced as she adjusted her rear-view mirror, glancing at the darkened street behind her. The air was thick with suspense, whispering secrets of the night that twisted the insides of her stomach like a coiling snake. The hum of her car engine was the only sound breaking the oppressive stillness as she drove through the empty streets of Springfield. Each porch light flickered like a fading memory, the silence amplified her sense of isolation. What lurked in that darkness? She found herself looking over her shoulder more often than necessary, as if an unseen predator was stalking her through shadows. The further she drove, the more the weight of unease buried itself in her chest. 15 minutes in, she saw a figure at the roadside. Disheveled, with wild hair and clothes torn at the edges, it almost looked familiar, but her mind wrestled with the idea. Was it exhaustion playing tricks on her? She shook her head, willing the grim thoughts to vanish. Just as she was about to convince herself of her sanity, her phone buzzed violently in her lap, shattering her fleeting calm. It was her husband, a frantic message that read, "There's a shadow in our backyard, the dog's barking like crazy." Panic surged through her veins like ice water. Gripping the steering wheel tight, her mind raced. How could she be so far away, trusting her family to this supposed safety while something malevolent lingered, just beyond her sight? The shadows amongst the trees crept closer to the edges of her perception, twisting into threats. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the pulse of dread that pulsed through the night. Before she contemplated too long, she caught a glimpse of that figure again in her rear-view mirror. Eyes wide, it seemed closer, more defined this time, a reflection of her deepest fears. She jerked her head back, her breaths shallow and quick. What was happening? The streets loomed darker, and corners shifted unnaturally, as if they were portals to realms unknown. Then she saw them flashing police lights in the distance. Relief swept over her before it turned bitter when she realized they were moving away, leaving her alone to confront the shadows. A creeping horror clawed at her chest as she approached her block. Just then, a thought sliced through her. The figure wasn't a mere trick of light, it was the embodiment of the darkness curled around her once idyllic suburban community. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As her house loomed nearer, a bead of sweat trickled down her back. There was a sharp gust of wind that rattled the trees, a whisper echoing her thoughts. What if the safety of home was just a facade? The figure had vanished, but its presence was woven into the very fabric of her neighborhood. Tension gripped her as she turned in, bracing for what awaited. Would she find her family safe and sound, or would the shadows of Springfield's night engulf her and draw her into their chilling embrace? As she approached, that familiar sense of dread wrapped around her like a shroud, and a single question hung in the air: was danger waiting just inside her front door? Lila parked her car, the engine's hum dying like a whisper against the backdrop of night. The yard was plunged in darkness, only the ghostly outline of her house breaking through the inky blackness. The porch light flickered wildly, casting erratic dancing shadows that seemed to mock her fear. She stepped out, heart hammering in her chest, her senses tuned to the slightest sound. The trees swayed ominously, the leaves rustling like hushed conversations wrapped in malevolence. "Jack!" she called, her voice trembling slightly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the night air. She shuffled towards the front door, each step pregnant with dread. What waited for her inside? The gnawing apprehension made her stomach churn. Something primal told her not to go in. As she neared the porch, her eyes caught a flicker of movement in the backyard. Reflexively, she turned, craning her neck to see. Pale moonlight illuminated a figure standing just beyond the tree line, a silhouette against the tall grass. "Jack!" she screamed, panic tearing through her. Without waiting for an answer, she darted inside, slamming the door behind her. It crashed shut with a thud that echoed through the empty hallway. The house felt hollow, an echo of laughter and warmth that now felt sinister in the unnatural stillness. She called out again, a quiver in her voice, "Where are you?" Her calls bounced back at her, cruel and mocking. Her phone buzzed again, jolting her. Breath caught in her throat as she reached for it, praying for a message from her husband. Instead, it was an alert from the Neighborhood Watch app, a notification chillingly familiar: suspicious activity reported. Stay alert. The figure wearing a hooded top was seen lurking around houses. She swallowed hard. The same figure. A cold fist curled around her heart. The terror from the street seeped into her bones. She could feel it, watching her, waiting for the moment to pounce. Suddenly, a bark erupted from the backyard, followed by a howl of panic. It was Rex, their beloved dog. Something must be out there. She had to act. Rex. She rushed to the back door, heart pounding. The yard was dark, but she could see the blurry outline of her dog, frantically pulling against its leash, barking at something just beyond the shed. Desperation fueled her steps. She flung open the door, the cold air slapping her face like ice water. "Rex, come here." She called him, but he was tangled in fear, his growls deepening as that shadow loomed nearer. In an instant, everything changed. The darkness rippled, and the figure stepped from the shadows, its face painted in pallid fear. It was her husband, Jack, but something was wrong. His eyes, usually soft and warm, were cold and lifeless. Lila staggered back, the ground feeling like it shifted beneath her. "Jack?" She whispered, but the figure stood still, breathing heavily, like he was fighting something within himself. And then came the whispering, a cacophony of twisted voices seeping from the edges of his form, weaving around him like smoke. Lila's breath hitched, heart racing as the spirits of the night clawed at her sanity. "Run!" Jack rasped, his voice both familiar and foreign. It sent chills down her spine. But before she could move, the shadows crept closer, snatching the light away, pulling her into their suffocating depths. The last thing she saw was Jack lunging at her with a fervor that screamed of desperation. And then everything turned black, just as Lila felt herself slipping away. A voice whispered through the silence, "This isn't over." What did he mean? What was awaiting Lila in that oppressive darkness, and would she ever escape the grasp of the unknown? Lila jolted awake, gasping as the last remnants of darkness clutched at her like icy fingers. Panic surged through her as she willed her frantic heart to settle. It wasn't the darkness that had her paralyzed, it was the reality that something was terribly wrong. She was lying on the cold hardwood floor of the living room, her body rigid, breath shallow. "Jack?" Her voice came out as a hoarse whisper, trembling with dread. No response. She forced herself to sit up, the room spinning for a moment before her eyes focused. Shadows lurked in every corner, stretching toward her as if trying to escape the fluorescent light flickering from the kitchen. The familiar hum of the refrigerator drew her toward the light, searching for clarity, truth, anything to push away the terror wrapping around her like a vice. "Rex." She called again, this time louder, hoping to hear the comforting bark of her dog. But only silence answered, heavy and oppressive. She struggled to get to her feet, her legs weak. Fear had immobilized her. Something crashed outside, loud and jarring, snapping her back to urgency. She turned, every instinct screaming at her to flee. The door to the backyard stood slightly ajar, swinging ever so slightly, a beckoning, yet perilous invitation. She swallowed hard and edged toward the door. One step at a time. The floor creaked ominously beneath her weight. As she stepped outside, the wind howled almost knowingly, wrapping around her, pulling her deeper into the night. The backyard looked vast and shadowy, the moonlight just a teasing sliver illuminating bits of grass, trees, and the shed, where Rex had last been tangled. "Rex." She called once more. Her heart raced as she moved toward the shed, the moon above flickering in and out of view, leaving her vulnerable in the shroud of darkness. Her breath quickened when she reached the shed. The door hung open, slightly ajar, almost as if something had forced its way out. A flash of movement made her heart jump. Was that a shadow passing? She squinted into the dimness, stepping cautiously closer. Rex. Where are you? That was when she felt the cold rush of breath on her neck, icy and unnatural. Panic struck, and she whipped around, but no one was there. Just the trees swaying, their branches clawing at the dark sky. She felt small, alone, and utterly exposed. A whimper broke the silence, low and gut-wrenching. It was Rex. He was inside the shed, trembling. She threw the door open, the hinges creaking in protest. Rex lay inside, hackles raised, eyes wide with terror. "Come on, boy," she urged, reaching for him. But Rex didn't move. Instead, he stared past her, fixated on something lurking just beyond the edge of the light. Lila's breath hitched as dread flipped her stomach. She slowly turned her head, and her blood froze. The figure, standing just outside the light's reach, where darkness pooled like spilled ink. The hooded outline of a man, face obscured. Her heart thundered, thoughts racing madly. What did it want? Jack? She shouted, instinctively seeking the familiarity of his name, praying it wouldn't echo back hollow and mocking. The figure shifted, and suddenly, the shadows surrounding it twisted, revealing a hint of a smile. Not Jack's smile. A sneer, something sinister, as if it reveled in her fear. She stepped back, pulling Rex with her as he finally scrambled to his feet, barking frantically, sensing the danger. "Run!" A familiar voice cried out from within, the whispered urgency of Jack slicing through the night, but where would she run? Lila was trapped, the darkness closing in, the malevolent shadow just outside her reach, and the walls of her reality crashing down around her. What was the truth lurking in the shadows? As she turned to flee, a chilling laughter echoed behind her, and all hope for clarity vanished into the night, and in that moment, she realized this nightmare was just beginning. Lila's instincts kicked in, and she sprinted back into the house, Rex hot on her heels. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang behind them, the sound reverberating through the hollow darkness. She locked it, hands trembling, heart pounding, and spun around, searching for sanctuary. The living room felt suffocating. Every shadow loomed larger, the corners darker. She could feel the presence outside, the weight of it pressing against the walls. Rex whined beside her, bark caught in his throat, eyes flicking to the doorway as if he could sense the danger lurking just beyond the threshold. "Jack!" Lila shouted again, her voice wrenching through the oppressive silence as she desperately searched the house for any sign of him. "Where are you?" She rounded the kitchen, heart racing with every creak of the floorboard beneath her. No answer came, only a slow, sinister drip from the sink, echoing in the void. She grasped the counter for support, glancing at the reflection in the window. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw him standing behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing. Just the gnawing certainty that something was very wrong, panic clawing at her chest. She moved back toward the living room. The front door remained shut, the flickering kitchen light casting uneasy shadows across the walls. And then she heard it, whispers. Soft, ghostly murmurs drifting through the house, words just beyond comprehension, swirling around like leaves caught in a whirlwind. The whispers were luring her, gentle yet horrifying, like a siren's call. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound, each step heavier than the last. She approached the staircase, its darkened steps threatening to swallow her whole. "Jack?" she called, voice wavering as Rex pressed against her leg, his growls low and urgent. The whispers grew louder, spiraling around her, until she could almost make out what they were saying. "Come play, join us." "No." She gasped, staggering back, her mind racing. It felt wrong. She had to get out before they drew her into the abyss. Just then, a loud crash resounded from upstairs, the sound splitting the took air like glass shattering. "Jack!" Lila rushed toward the staircase, every muscle urging her to flee, but the terror kept her rooted in place. The shadows above swirled, a dark vortex beckoning her closer. She climbed the first step, then the next, heart hammering in her ears, forcing herself to venture further up the stairs. Each creak of wood echoed like a gunshot in her ears, a grim reminder of her presence. As she reached the landing, she stopped short. The door to the master bedroom stood ajar, revealing only darkness. A low, disembodied sound swept from within, almost laughing, like it was toying with her. Rex's growl escalated, raw and fearful, urging her to back away. But another crash erupted from inside the room, and Lila felt a surge of determination. "Jack!" She pushed herself forward, gripping the doorknob like a lifeline. The door swung open with a groan, and in that moment of hope, the swirling whispers ceased. The room was empty, dust motes danced in the sliver of moonlight spilling from the window, but a cold feeling settled in her stomach. Lila could sense it before she saw it. In the corner, on the floor, lay something that shouldn't have been there. A shirt. It was Jack's, stained and torn, as if a violent struggle had taken place. Her breath caught in her throat, and dread pooled deep in her gut, seeping into her thoughts as her eyes wandered to the window. The figure was no longer outside. It was inside with her. And now, the voice echoed again, a mockery of Jack's, "You belong to us." The walls trembled, and Lila felt the ground shift beneath her. Her heart sank into a pitch-black abyss as the suffocating darkness enveloped her, an echo of laughter sent chills crawling down her spine. Would the truth ever surface from the depths of her nightmare, or was she fated to drift forever in the shadows? Lila's knees buckled under the weight of that thought, and the laughter swelled around her, wrapping her in an embrace that promised only despair. What reality awaited her in that dark embrace? Lila's heart raced, pounding like a frantic drum against her ribs. Every muscle in her body screamed to run, yet a paralyzing fear entrapped her in the dim, suffocating room. The figure's words echoed in her mind, twisting like a knife, "You belong to us." The laughter hummed around her, stirring an icy despair that threatened to engulf her. Rex bristled, his growls deepening into low, guttural sounds that filled the silence. The dog sensed it too, the malevolence lurking just beyond the edges of the mundane world. She brought her hand to her mouth, biting down hard to stave off a scream. Then, from the corner, a shadow shifted. It danced just beyond the moonlight, and her breath hitched. It had shape, yet it didn't feel like any form she recognized. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but before she could move, it lunged, a blur of darkness whipping across the room, barely missing her. "Stay back!" she shouted, adrenaline fueling her voice as she stumbled backward. Rex barked fiercely, a desperate sound that seemed to echo against the walls. Silence followed, thick enough to cut. Lila had to get out. She spun, breath hitching again. The hallway's path was a black maw waiting to swallow her whole. But the whispers returned, insistent, wrapping their tendrils around her mind. "Stay, join us." "No." She forced through gritted teeth, anger fueling a surge of bravery. She darted toward the stairwell, but her legs felt heavy, weighted with dread. The lower stairs loomed like voracious jaws ready to snap shut. Then, the laughter rang out again, mingling with a voice that seemed to echo Jack's name, drenching her in cold terror. "He's ours now, Lila." In a flash of instinct, she bolted blindly down the stairs, the wood creaking ominously beneath her flight, urging her on. She reached the landing and skidded to a stop in front of the front door, her only way out. The locks gleamed mockingly at her, the chain hanging like a noose. Rex rushed to her side, staring up, urging her into action. Lila fumbled with the lock, fingers trembling as they slicked with sweat. She felt a cold breath on her neck, a whisper that sent shards of ice racing up her spine, and she could almost feel the presence behind her, palpable and lurking. With a forceful click, the lock gave way, and Lila threw the door open wide, a gust of frigid air cutting through the house. As she dashed outside, the moonlight revealed a world eerily still, shadows standing at unnatural angles, stretching away into the night. "Jack!" She cried out again, her voice wavering in the stillness. Where was he? There was no answer. Only the rustle of leaves, and then the laughter much louder now filling the air like a dark symphony of despair. Rex led her down the porch steps, but before they could escape, the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous crack. Lila whipped around, panic clawing at her throat. The house stood ominously silent once more, the figure inside still waiting, still watching. Rex's teeth bared, his growl rising louder. A familiar sound drifted on the chilly breeze, a faint echo of Jack's voice calling her, distant and distorted. "Is that really you?" Lila whispered against the growing fear that suffocated her. "Come back," it beckoned in a sing-song tone that set her skin crawling. "Join us." Lila froze, the temptation grappling with the terror. She turned to run but hesitated at the foot of the driveway, the shadows pulling at her, and the whispers continued to swirl around her. But what if he was there? Trapped somewhere inside, suffering alone? As she stood torn between escape and the possibility of rescue, the world around her churned in a tightening spiral of blackness, threatening to swallow her whole. Where could she go now? Would she have to confront the darkness to save Jack, or was she too late? The air thickened, wrapping Lila in a suffocating embrace. Each breath felt like a betrayal. The laughter still echoed behind her, a sinister chorus taunting her, mocking her desperation. Rex growled low, his fur bristling as he scanned the darkness, ready to protect her. But there was no escaping the sense that something watched them from the shadows, something that wanted her to return to that house. Every fiber of her being urged her to run, but what if Jack was still inside, calling for help? She squared her shoulders, attempting to shake off the paralyzing dread. "We can't just leave him," she thought, heart hammering in her chest. With a swift glance at Rex, she made a decision. "We have to go back," she muttered, her voice barely a whisper. An eerie silence fell like a shroud around them, more ominous than the laughter. Rex tilted his head, confused, but he followed her lead as she turned back toward the door. Each step felt like wading through sludge, the shadows wrapping around her, coaxing her into the abyss she had just escaped. The porch felt colder, as if it were a separate entity, alive and breathing, inhaling her fears. She reached the door, pawing at the knob, praying it would yield as easily as it had before. When she turned it, the door swung open with an angry creak, revealing the darkness within. Rex stepped back, ears flat against his skull, bristling as he caught the scent of something rotten lurking in the entryway, a pungent mix of decay and despair. What had happened to this place? Lila's heart sank, her instincts screaming louder than ever to turn back, but she pressed on anyway, crossed the threshold, and stepped into the dark maw that seemed ready to swallow her whole. Inside, the air grew heavy with dread, and the whispers morphed into a cacophony, battling for her attention. "Lila, join us," echoed from the walls as if the house itself was alive, yearning for her to accept its dark calling. Each footfall reverberated through the dimly lit space, and the shadows danced like starving spirits, flickering at the corner of her vision. "Jack!" She called out again, voice trembling, fear gnawing at her resolve. "Where are you?" She strained to hear any response. Nothing but eerie stillness greeted her. Were they deceiving her? Was Jack really inside, or was it all a trap? She moved cautiously. Rex stayed close, his protective instincts keeping him on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards was amplified, sending shockwaves of panic jolting through her. As they ventured deeper, Lila noticed strange symbols etched into the wall, glowing faintly as if sealing the house's secrets. A sickening thought tugged at her, the idea that this was a shrine, not just a home. Suddenly, the shadows coiled tighter around her, pulling on her clothes, snagging at her skin like icy fingers. Lila pressed on, determined but terrified. Just then, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. She gasped, frozen in place. Was someone up there? A mix of terror and hope battled within her. "Jack!" She screamed, louder now, her voice igniting the stillness like a match in a dark room. She felt the calm before a storm, a sensation that something was about to change. The laughter echoed again, now a chorus of voices swirling around her, straining against the fabric of her sanity. "He's just upstairs just waiting for you," the voices taunted, coaxing her closer to the staircase. What if she was too late? If she climbed those stairs, would she find Jack? Would she find him alive or lost forever? Heart racing, she took a tentative step forward. "I'm coming!" she shouted defiantly, knowing she might have just stepped into the jaws of horror. And then the laughter intensified, a wave of sinister glee washing over her. Would she descend into madness or escape this nightmare? As she reached the first step, Lila heard a soft whimper from above that sent chills racing down her spine. "Help me," the breathy voice begged. "Jack? Jack!" But a cold wind swept through the hall, extinguishing hope with a chilling whisper. "You shouldn't have come back." Were the shadows growing thicker? What awaited her on the second floor? The choice loomed large, and as she climbed, the darkness urged her onward with a foreboding promise. What truths lay hidden in the house of horrors? Would the darkness claim them both? Lila's fingers trembled as they gripped the banister, feeling its rough wood beneath her palm. The soft whimper echoed again, mournful and distant, yet so close it could have burned her ear. "Jack!" she shouted again, determination fueling her. Each step creaked in protest, the ancient wood seeming to complain under her weight. She was drawn upward, every instinct still screaming to run, but she couldn't abandon him now. The air grew colder as she climbed, a heavy fog wrapping around her. Something was lurking just beyond her sight, a watcher cloaked in darkness, breathing in rhythm with her fear. "Lila, help me," the voice pleaded again, now closer, and she pushed through the suffocating haze, drawn toward an open door at the end of the hall. The laughter twisted into shrieks, a dissonant harmony that echoed in her skull, clashing with her hope. As she approached, the door creaked wider, revealing a room heavy with shadows. Rex stayed close, his growl rumbling like distant thunder, but Lila's heart raced, caught between dread and urgency. She peeked inside. The room was empty, save for a single flickering light, the bulb swinging from the ceiling, casting erratic patterns on the walls. Her eyes darted around. Where was Jack? Another cry shimmered in the air, more desperate than before. "Lila! Please!" His voice broke her heart. Desperation surged in her. "I'm right here," she yelled, taking another step inside. Without warning, the door slammed shut behind her with a bone-jarring thud, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as she spun around, eyes wide. "Rex?" she called, but her voice seemed swallowed by the abyss. Silence fell like a heavy curtain, and then the whispering began again, the sinister chant intensifying, blending into a horrific symphony of despair. "Join us forever, join us," they merged into one voice, each word dripping with malice. She staggered back, her heart thudding like a war drum. Shadows writhed along the walls, swarming toward her, hungry and insatiable. The symbols etched into the room pulsed, glowing brighter as if feeding off her fear, urging her deeper into their grasp. "Jack!" she cried, her voice cracking. How could he be here? The shadows seemed to stretch out like claws, reaching for her, trying to pull her under. They held a terrible promise, the kind that could shatter minds and steal souls. A sudden crash echoed from the window, jolting her with shock. Rex! There he was, barking furiously, pawing at the glass as if he could break it down. The light from outside strained against the darkness, illuminating the edges of creeping shadows. "Rex! Get in here!" She lunged for the door, but it was useless. It stood firm, trapped by the horror inside. "You shouldn't have come back," the voice coiled around her, wrapping tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "You belong to us now." With her heart racing, Lila turned back to face the room. The shadows were shifting, taking shape, dark figures forming in the depths. They moved, slithering closer, but she refused to succumb to despair. "Not today!" she shouted, striking the floor with her foot. The whispering ceased momentarily, and for a split second, silence enveloped her. But the reprieve was brief. It surged back stronger, a torrent of rage and hunger. She heard Rex's whimpers melding with the chant, desperate and echoing. Lila, Jack's voice called, now mixed with a chilling echo that froze her blood. Help me. With a surge of determination, she backed towards the window, the shadows trembling in response. She had to get to Rex, to break through that glass barrier, to escape this nightmare. But something was blocking her, something that didn't want her to leave. Get away! She screamed, voice raw, pushing against the force that closed in. She felt it, a chill running up her spine. Just then, her eyes flicked to the corner of the room, and there it was, a figure emerging from the dark, a grotesque silhouette stretching high, features obscured. Horror coursed through her veins. It raised a hand, pointing at her, and the shadows surged forward, a wave intent on consuming her. Hole! Run! Get out! She urged herself, racing back towards the window. Would the glass hold? Would Rex pull her through? But the figure in the shadows let out a laugh, a sound that swallowed all hope, and Lila realized with terror, she wasn't just up against darkness. What if it wants more than just you? The shadows leapt toward her, as she flung herself at the window, determined to break free. Would they drag her back? Or would she finally break the cycle of despair? Time slipped away as she fought to escape, the fate of both her and Jack hanging in the balance, teetering on the edge of the abyss. The glass shattered with a thunderous crash, shards exploding outward like a storm of ice. Lila felt a slice of hope as she plummeted, arms flailing, into the icy night. Rex was there, barking hysterically, urging her forward, anchoring her sanity in this chaotic storm. She landed with a dull thud on the grass below, gasping for breath. The cold air struck her face like a whip, slicing through the fog of despair that had engulfed her moments before. But the moment of relief was fleeting. She turned back just in time to see the shadows pooling around the window frame, writhing and surging like a living creature, hungry for its prey. Lila! Run! Jack's voice echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of the stakes. She scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Rex tugged on her sleeve, pulling her toward the safety of the trees beyond the yard. But a pull, a tether anchored in fear, urged her to look back. The figure stood at the window, grotesque and silhouetted against the dim light of the house. Its shape flickered in and out as if it could barely hold itself together. The shadows thickened around it, swirling like smoke, and it let out a laugh that seemed to curl around her mind, chilling her bones. Leave us, it whispered, each word dripping like venom. We are eternal. Lila's stomach twisted. What did it mean by, we? She shook her head, trying to clear the fog of fear choking her. Jack! She cried, the word tearing from her throat in desperation. Rex turned, his hackles raised, body tense and ready. The shadows began to drift closer to the ground, slithering across the grass like snakes. They were coming for her now, hungry for the warmth of her breath. No! Get back! Panic surged. She felt the ground underneath her tremble, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. Rex barked and lunged forward, pulling her away from the encroaching darkness. She ran, her feet pounding the grass, racing toward the tree line. But with every desperate step, a chill seeped deeper into her bones, whispering promises of despair. Would Jack truly be lost? The thought was a knife, twisting in her heart. Ahead, the trees loomed like monstrous sentinels, trunks gnarled and twisted, branches clawing at the sky. Lila plunged into the forest, illuminated only by the pale moonlight filtering through the leaves. She could hear Rex's panting, frantic, as they forged deeper into the woods. Shadows danced like phantoms around them, making her pulse quicken. Why is this happening? Why now? The questions flooded her mind, racing alongside her fear. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl broke through the night. It echoed, reverberating off the trees, and she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Something was chasing her. She could sense it, creeping through the underbrush, its breath hot on her neck. No, no. Lila stumbled, nearly crashing into a tree as she turned, eyes searching the darkness. Jack! She screamed, but her voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the vast, empty night. Rex darted to her side, a fierce guardian against the unknown. Lila reached down, gripping his fur tightly, hoping for some semblance of comfort. But the howls grew closer, morphing from mere sound into something tangible, a threat. The darkness didn't just want her, it craved her essence, her very soul. She had to find Jack. He needed her. We have to go back. Her voice broke with desperation. Before Rex could react, the shadows surged, reaching for her, clenching and clawing. Lila turned away again, fighting for her breath as panic threatened to engulf her. The night mirrored her terror, growing colder, as the whispers returned, circling like vultures above her thoughts. Join us, they chanted, a chorus of despair clawing at the edges of her sanity. The trees leaned in, watching, waiting, as if they were part of the sinister play. Heart in her throat, she pressed forward. But in the distance, a flicker of light caught her eye. It danced across the ground, beckoning her closer. Could it be Jack? She called out again, hope mingling with dread as she took off toward the glowing beacon. Yet with every step toward that light, a heavy weight pulled at her, reminding her of the darkness she had escaped, the figure still looming in the ruins of the home she thought she left behind. Was she leading herself to salvation, or would it lead her straight back into the arms of the horror that pursued her? As she sprinted, lungs burning and heart racing, she realized, in this race against dark forces, nothing was ever as it seemed. What awaited her at the glow of light? The answers she sought or the entrapment she dreaded? Lila dashed toward the flickering light, her heart hammering in sync with the pounding of her feet against the uneven forest floor. Rex stayed close, a steadfast shadow at her side. Each stride felt more precarious, the howls from behind echoed in her head, a cruel reminder that time was slipping away. As she raced, the light grew clearer. It pulsed gently, swallowing the overhanging darkness like a lighthouse guiding lost souls. Jack! She cried out again, her voice breaking against the shadows. Would he be there? Could he hear her? Branch after branch whipped against her arms as she charged through the thicket. Every crackle beneath her feet amplified a sense of urgency. Just when the light offered a glimpse of hope, it wavered, flickering like a candle caught in the wind. Panic tightened her throat. Rex stopped suddenly, nose to the ground, ears perked. The tension in the air shifted, charged with a desperate energy. Lila slowed, her instincts roaring at her to listen. She could feel it, something was watching. With a trembling breath, she peered into the swirling shadows. Stay close, buddy, she whispered, and then she saw it. Just at the edge of the light, a figure emerged, thin and elongated. It wore a facade of familiarity, but the contours of its face twisted in a grotesque parody of a smile. Lila, it beckoned, the voice a mockery that sent chills racing down her spine. It sounded like Jack, but layered underneath was a slithering hiss, a sinister echo that turned her blood to ice. Get away from her! Rex barked, a fierce guardian ready to protect. Lila's heart soared at his bravery, but fear quickly swallowed it whole. With trembling hands, she stepped closer, feeling drawn to the light yet wary of the shape standing there. Lila, come home. The figure reached out, fingers elongated into claw-like appendages. The air buzzed with an unnatural energy as it stepped into the halo of luminescence, revealing its form. Jack's face was unrecognizable, textures shifting and twisting, eyes gleaming with a hunger she could not fathom. Lila's breath hitched. No! You're not him. She knew Jack. Her Jack didn't seem to wear the shadows. This isn't you. Why fight it? The creature slithered closer, eyes locking with hers. Embrace the darkness, the eternal peace. A screech echoed behind her, snapping her back to reality. The howls intensified, a cacophony spiraling into madness. The ground shook, sending tremors through her feet. "Rex, we need to go." She spun on her heel, the warmth of the light whispering promises she couldn't afford to listen to. With urgency, she pushed deeper into the forest. The howls faded, but not without leaving a deep dread. That figure, that voice, it was all wrong. Behind her, the flickering light blinked once more, fading, confirming that whatever had stood there wasn't Jack. It was something far worse than she'd ever known. Branches clawed at her, tears forming in her eyes from the sting of the leaves. What is happening? The question hung in the air, unanswered and suffocating. Gasping, she stumbled into a clearing, heart racing faster than ever. In the middle of the open space, the moon glared down, illuminating a series of stone totems encircling a deep, dark pit. The ground beneath shook, reverberating with a low hum that resonated in her chest. She could hear whispers echoing from the pit, a chorus of voices taunting her with promises of despair. Join us, they sang, a dreadful lullaby that made her skin crawl. Rex whined, his eyes wide and terrified. Lila backed away, knowing they were far from safe. She had to escape this place, this nightmare. But as she turned, the figure lurked on the edge of the clearing, still grinning, inviting her to step closer. Together, Lila forever. As she spun to run, a shape emerged from the shadows behind her, forcing her to halt. The pit still beckoned with its malevolence, and somewhere in the collective whispers, she could almost hear Jack pleading for her. Was it already too late for him? Heart in her throat, she weighed her options, knowing that there was no turning back. Would she succumb to the darkness, or face whatever reality awaited her? The howls were coming back, more frantic than ever. Lila felt the ground shift again, the sense of danger closing in. What would she choose? What awaited her in the depths of that pit? Lila stood at the edge of the pit, heart racing, breaths coming in shallow gasps. The shadows surrounding her seemed to pulse, shifting like a living entity, waiting for her next move. This is it, she whispered to herself, wrestling with the turmoil in her gut. I can't let it win. I won't. Rex stayed glued to her side, a steadfast reminder of her purpose. She had to save Jack, no matter the cost. The whispers grew louder, clawing at her resolve. Join us, they chirped, twisting into a symphony of malicious glee. She could hear Jack's voice slicing through the sounds, a faint cry desperately reaching her. Save me, Lila's mind churned. If she jumped into the pit, would she find Jack? Or would she fall deeper into the abyss? My choice, she muttered, teeth clenched. Determination surged as she pushed back the fear, squaring her shoulders. I will not let you take me. With a fierce cry, she lunged forward, aiming to break the circle of shadows. Rex barked defiantly, bolting ahead of her as if knowing she needed him at that moment. The darkness writhed, reaching for them, but together they pressed on. Lila felt something tugging at her, the shadows attempting to drag her back into their depths, but she fought harder, claws of determination gripping her heart. Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled violently. An explosion of whispers roared to life, shaking her resolve. The pit's edges cracked, and before she realized what was happening, the earth beneath her crumbled like dried leaves. No! Lila screamed, flinging an arm out to steady herself, but the terrain gave way beneath her feet, plunging her down toward an unseen fate. As she fell, a rush of wind whipped past her, filling her lungs, accompanied by swirling echoes of evanescent laughter. The pit was deeper than she imagined, an endless void that threatened to swallow her whole. But just as despair began to settle in her bones, she felt a tug around her waist, a lifeline. Rex had leapt forward, sinking his teeth into her jacket, attempting to pull her back to safety. Rex! She gasped, gripping the ground with all her might, the dog-esque growl filled with determination. He pulled hard, his muscles straining, and suddenly, Lila was catapulted back up onto solid ground. She gasped for air, heart racing, feeling the warmth of daylight slowly seep back into her world like a balm on her wounds. The dark whispers shrieked in anger, morphing into a cacophony of torment as they faded, defeated. Lila took a moment, breathing in the air that felt fresh and soothing, sweeping away the remnants of dread that clung to her. "Jack, come on," she called, tearing her eyes back toward the looming trees. There was nothing but silence, heavy and foreboding. Panic raced through her again. What had happened to him? She couldn't leave him. She wouldn't. "Rex," she urged, grabbing his collar tightly. "We have to get him." Without hesitation, she dashed back toward the house. The shadows cast there seemed defeated, but the dread lingered. She took conflicting breaths, gripping Rex to steady her nerves as they ventured through the door again. Inside, the house felt hollow, devoid of life. "Jack?" she called, hoping, praying for a sign. She rushed through every room, fear twisting her gut. Each unanswered call grew more desperate than the last, weaving into a tapestry of frustration and fear. "Where are you?" As she bounded into the master bedroom, a flicker caught her eye. Something lay on the floor, a familiar shirt. "No, please." Tears welled as she knelt to touch the fabric, remembering the warmth of Jack's embrace. He wouldn't leave her like this. He couldn't. Suddenly, she heard a faint murmur from below. It dripped through the floor like honey, heavy and sweet with longing. "Lila, help me!" There it was, as clear as day. It filled her with a renewed fire, the last flicker of hope that burst forth and propelled her into action. Rex followed close behind, his body taut with urgency. They plunged into the basement, descending the creaky stairs, determined to reclaim the man she loved. The whispers returned, swirling around them, clawing at her resolve. "Join us!" "No!" she shouted, each syllable sharp and cutting. "I want tea." The shadows rushed toward her, but this time, she stood firm, feet planted wide as she pushed against them with every ounce of strength she had. "Jack!" Lila shouted, voice echoing through the chilling air. She reached the end of the room, where a beam of light shimmered from behind a barricade. Hope ignited again. She surged toward it, Rex at her side, and pushed through the shadows as if they were nothing more than fabric. With each step, the whispers grew softer, replaced by Jack's muffled voice calling to her. "Lila!" Jack's voice broke through the darkness, pulling her closer. "Lila!" "Jack, I'm coming!" she yelled. She hammered against a warped wooden door until it splintered. Then, she was there. A glimpse of Jack stood against the light, flickering like the flame of a candle. His face was pale, with hints of terror still etched upon it, but he looked real whole. "I knew you'd come," he breathed, a mix of relief and despair pooling behind his hazel eyes. The shadows swarmed around them, but Lila took Jack's hand. "Not today." Together, they stepped from the precipice of despair into the light, the oppressive shadows withdrawing from their resolve. As they surged outside, daylight speared through the trees, feeble but undeniable. The world around them seemed alive again. The whispers faded, drowned in sunlight as warmth enveloped them, grounding them back in reality. Trembling, they shared a moment of silence, cementing their survival against the unknown. Lila turned to Jack, relief flooding through her. "You're safe now." "We're safe." He nodded, taking a deep breath, his body beginning to relax. "I thought I lost you." "No one is leaving again," she promised, her heart finally steady. With Rex by their side, the three figures stood unified against the shadows that lingered behind them. The lingering echoes of darkness persisted but paled in the face of their shared light, united by the strongest bond they had: love, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. "Let us go home," she said, feeling the thrill of a new beginning welling in her chest. This time, they would lead the way together, and so, with hand in hand, they walked forward into the new day, ready to reclaim their lives from the shadows that dared challenge them. Now, as this thrilling story comes to a close, I need you to do something vital. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now. Each like fuels the algorithm and helps us bring even more chilling tales to you. And flood the comments section with your reactions and mind-blowing theories about this roller coaster ending. I want to hear what you think. Lastly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to experience this conclusion. Your support is everything, and only true fans understand the real power of our community. Let us keep the thrill alive together.